So I wanted to talk today about the intersection of genius, insanity, and open-minded creative thinking. In my business, a lot of talented people come together on a project and try to take words, concepts, and turn them into moving images. We're lucky enough to have a tremendous amount of talent come to California, and then we end up going to Atlanta or Louisiana or wherever we go, but coming there to help to make filmed entertainment. And with that creative talent comes difficult times. The creative thinking process isn't completely narrow. And my job has been to find a way to create parameters so that that creative genius can operate with freedom and inspiration and spontaneity without creating chaos. And I made 2 movies over the last almost 30 years of doing this, which had 2 unique experiences which I want to talk about today, which define this process and what can go right and what can go wrong. Somebody told me early on in my career, no good movie comes from a pleasant experience. I've tried to prove that wrong. Another person, Nora Ephron, may she rest in peace, said to me, I don't want to make a movie with anyone I am not willing to have dinner with. I agree with that too. The first film I want to talk about in the experience was called The Soloist. The movie is based on a series of columns written by Steve Lopez in the LA Times. He met a homeless man on the streets of Los Angeles who was playing a violin, Nathaniel Anthony Ayers. And Mr. Ayers turned out to be a Juilliard-trained musician. He came from Cleveland, Ohio, went to Juilliard. He was one of the first African Americans admitted into the music program, and after a year and a half had a schizophrenic break. Eventually found his way to Los Angeles, was living in the 3rd Street Tunnel because he liked the acoustics, and he would play his cello and his violin and his trumpet pretty much all day. And Steve formed a friendship with Nathaniel and wrote 21 columns about it, and eventually a book, and we were lucky enough to produce the film. A little bit of context to understand Los Angeles and its Skid Row. 80% of the homeless people that live in that area have some form of mental illness. They come from all around the country because of weather, because services are down there, lots of missions and agencies that serve. And it's a difficult environment, but it's their home, it's where they live, they care deeply about their home. It's challenging. We've had situations where the LAPD for 2 years did a program called Safer Cities Initiative, where if anyone had a shopping cart or an ash off a cigarette, they were arrested and thrown into jail. The Twin Towers in Los Angeles is downtown. Their prison, the 7th floor, is the largest mental institution in the United States of America that does not provide services. They get cycled out, back to the street, get arrested again. This is the world that Nathaniel Ayers lived in and all the other residents of Skid Row. It's criminalization of homelessness and mental illness is outrageous, but it does happen. There was an article actually in the New Yorker that, if you want to look it up, it was called $1 Million Murray. They found this guy named Murray in Reno, Nevada, who for 10 years had cycled through emergency rooms, jails on the street. And the city of Reno spent $1 million dealing with Murray over 10 years. Permanent supportive housing, which is a program that I believe in, where you put people into a housing situation where there's services in the building, it averages about $17,000 a year for everything. It's a lot better deal than spending $1 million. Anyway, so we made this film, and we got to know people in the community, not only Mr. Ayers, but people like Bam Bam, who was a veteran who came to LA, wanted to turn himself into a woman, transgender, lost his child, had major issues, was a heroin addict, but had a dream and had a desire to be creative and to do something for the world. Or Detroit, who was literally a crack whore, as a woman who had 2 children, was living a middle-class life, completely broke, ended up on Skid Row, turning tricks, taking drugs, but she was an actress, and we hired those people to be in the film. We wanted the film to be authentic, and we felt that the creative process, as long as I could create parameters that were safe, would allow the film to rise to an authentic place. So Jamie Foxx was hired to play the role of Nathaniel Ayers, and Jamie cared very deeply that he do a performance that wasn't just an external performance. He didn't want to have the mannerisms, the look, the speech patterns only. He wanted to understand the thought process of a schizophrenic mind. And it was challenging. I sent Jamie to UCLA Psychiatric Hospital, where he met with the head of schizophrenia, who had talked about how it works. It's a gating system. We all have a gate, and as the day goes along, we filter out impulses that we don't want to deal with. The schizophrenic's gating system doesn't work. It's completely wide open. From the minute they wake up in the morning to the minute they go to bed at night, it is a constant flow of stimulus that they cannot shut off. It's very difficult. But Jamie wanted to feel that. He wanted to understand that so he could be that. About 2 weeks before we started filming the movie, I get a phone call from his agent. We have a problem. Jamie is in the hospital. Jamie thinks he has schizophrenia. And we were like, whoa. And he had got himself into such a place trying to do this that he literally thought he had given it to himself. He had created that moment where he broke. Now, he did break. He had an anxiety issue. He was feeling things that he wouldn't have felt if he hadn't gone through this experience, but he did not have a schizophrenic break. And he spent 2 days in the hospital. We changed the entire way we dealt with him during the filming of the movie. He didn't want to be at home. We found a hotel room for him. We had somebody with him 24 hours a day. He was so petrified that he was going to affect his life forever for having tried really hard to create a performance that was full. If you show a videotape, this is a scene we did in the movie that I think will demonstrate how far he went.
What's with Neil Diamond?
I thought that was you.
Well, I'm flattered. He's a good-looking guy.
What's wrong? What's this business about me having a schizophrenic mind?
It's legal jargon.
It says that I have a schizophrenic mind. I do not
It doesn't mean anything.
have a schizophrenic mind.
That's not what I think. Nathaniel, they try to put people in a...
I'm not going anywhere.
And the good news is it has nothing to do with it.
I don't go where you say go. I go where I want to go.
Okay.
You don't put me away, Mr. Lopez. You don't put me away.
Okay.
You don't put me away.
I'm not... I don't,
Yes,
no.
you
Yes, you don't
are.
have to go
Yes, you
to
are.
court. You don't have to go anywhere, because Jennifer will take care of it.
My sister's not coming near me. She's not coming near me.
Okay,
She's not
remember
coming
what
near
you
me.
said
She says
before.
she's not coming. If I say
right.
she's not coming, then she's not
You
coming.
said, Nathaniel,
Listen, I'm not having any more. I'm not having any more. Nathaniel. I'm sick of being Nathaniel, and you're Mr. Lopez. Okay, I'm not your slave. I'm not your boy. I'm not Mr. Colonel Sanders.
No, I'm sorry, I was
I'm not
wrong.
Mr. Walt
I'm
Disney.
sorry, I was
I'm a
wrong.
man. I can take care of myself. I can take care of myself, Mr. Lopez. And I don't need you. I don't need the city. I despise the city, and I despise you. And if I ever see you again, I'll cut you open and gut you like a fish. Because I'm Nathaniel Anthony Harris Jr. Mr. All right. Mr. Nathaniel Anthony Ayers Jr. N-A-T-H-A.
You're of no consequence.
We shot that on the last day of filming of the movie because we didn't know how Jamie would react having to go through that at the very end. It was as real a performance by somebody who doesn't have schizophrenia as I think you'll see. But it was a good example of how we, the director, myself as the producer, we created a safe environment. So the combination of insanity, creative genius, and film came together to create something that will last forever. The other example I want to give is a completely different one. I was lucky enough, or crazy enough, to make the last movie that Marlon Brando acted in, which was called The Score. I was warned by many people that it was the stupidest decision I could ever make to work with this man. John Frankenheimer, may he rest in peace, said, we were sitting in a waiting room at a studio, and he goes, "Are you doing that movie with Brando?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I did a movie with Brando." He says, "If I were broke and had no other job available to me, I would lay down in the gutter and die before I worked with Marlon Brando." Now, I'd heard all that, but I was convinced, of course, I was going to make a different situation out of it. Boy, was I wrong. A hugely talented guy, and I had some of the most amazing moments of my life. In order to manage him, I spent every night an hour in his hotel room listening to him tell stories, listening to him pitch me ideas on the ending of the movie that had no relation to the script that we were doing. But he needed to create chaos. He said to me at the beginning, he goes, "Who do you think you hired?" And I said, "Marlon Brando." He goes, "You hired the brand, Marlon Brando. The Marlon Brando that you think you hired hasn't existed in 40 years. He said, "So I'll give you what you want, the brand." And I was determined to make sure that he gave more than what he thought he was going to give. And it was challenging. And for him, the only way he was able to find a path to being more than just a surface performer was to create chaos. He literally had a doctor sign an insurance certificate stating that he was allergic to the director, and the director could not be within 100 yards of him. True story. Robert De Niro, who was also in the movie, who was a complete mensch, agreed to be the intermediary along with me. And we ran messages back and forth between the director, who was off in another room, to get to Mr. Brando. But in Marlon's chaos, he actually went to a place that he told me he would never go. And I'll end with this description of a scene that was just phenomenal. There's a scene in the movie where Robert De Niro walks into Marlon Brando's house. There's a pool that's empty. Marlon Brando is sitting at the other end with his legs. And what's supposed to happen is he walks over and he's begging Robert De Niro to do one last criminal burglary. And at the end of the scene, he is supposed to, Mr. Brando is supposed to emote, cry, beg him to do it. And Marlon said to me at 6 a.m., "I'm not crying, I'm not going there, I'll give you the scene, it'll be good enough." I told Bob what Marlon said. The scene plays out. He comes and sits next to De Niro and he says, "So I need you to do this, Nick." And Bob is supposed to say, "Okay, I'll do it." And he looks at him, he looks at Marlon, and he just puts his head down and stares at the bottom of the pool. And Marlon's like, "So you're going to do it? I need you to do it." And Bob didn't flinch. He kept looking straight down. And he forced Marlon to get agitated. He forced Marlon to beg him in a different way to do the job. And after about 5 minutes, and Marlon had tears, it's in the movie, this take is in the movie, Bob looks up, and again, the line is supposed to be, "Okay, I'll do it." He looks up and he says, "I hope you're not fucking me up." And he stood up and he walked off the set. And Marlon sat there for 2 minutes, heavy breathing, red in the face, having emoted. Stood up and roared angrily and walked off the set. But we got the scene the way it was intended. And we were able to channel chaos created by this insanity into a piece of art that will last forever. And I think that if there's one thing I can say to everybody here today that I think will be valuable, you can create a place for people to be creative, even the most challenging people, even people who have some form of mental illness or create chaos. You can do it, create a safe place, support them, love them, and I think great things will come of it. I think our society benefits because rather than throwing them off into a corner and saying, you can't, give them a place where they can. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.